And of course, make it fun. This is what you know Google to be for. You're in an office, that's a lot of fun, but we think the China office is even more fun. We do a lot of office team building activities. So here you see some of the fun things we've done. We've done office decoration. On the left side, you see some people brought a tent. Another group brought a bed, and I remember seeing the mover who brought the bed in from the furniture store, just shaking his head and said, "I can't believe this company letting employees bring beds into the office." We also just moved into our new big building. We moved in last September. This is our building in Beijing, in Zhongguancun near Tsinghua University. We're there for an obvious reason. This is recruiting, of course. This is our lobby. And this shows you some of the historic pictures of the people. On the lower right-hand side, you'll see a bunch of people crawling on the floor and getting picture taken. That is to symbolize, some people like to call Google go-go, dog. So they're trying to be cute dogs there. And here is a picture of people writing lots of fun things on our billboard. You can see people really have a very outgoing, fun mentality. Somebody decided to put a sponsored AdWords on the bottom of that page, for example. Here is at our opening ceremony of our building. And then you see pictures of lots of people really working in a place that's very colorfully decorated. And here is a very Chinese decoration in one of the offices. And more people coding away. Our famous surround you with monitors. And this is our karaoke room. That's to show you we do localize. You don't see one of those in Kirkland. If you come to our massage room, guess what? It's not just back massage. It's also foot massage, of course. Some things are universal. So you got our exercise room. And foosball, and lower is the pool table. And then left side, another Chinese tradition, right? Dance, Dance Revolution. And of course, the most famous cafeteria. We were just interviewing in December for our executive chef. And we advertised all over China. We, in fact, looked for a consultant who is kind of the expert of knowing who's the best chef in China. We said, "Can you recommend a couple of people to come and interview?" And what he said was, "Can I interview?" and he's actually one of the finalists. Here's a picture of the other finalist. We'll be opening our cafeteria in March. Okay, we can't claim to have the most engineers or the most senior engineers, but I'm certain we'll have the best food of all of our offices. So that's how we went about building a great team. Now I want to talk just a little bit about market opportunities. I know you're all here curious what we're building in China. So needless to say, I can't tell you what we're building. But I can tell you what we've looked at the market. I mean, you can see a lot of this from analyst studies too. What are the interesting market opportunities? We may or may not tackle all of them. We talked a little bit about the community concept, but here is a couple of others. We'll start with the search. So when it comes to just pure web search, that's our core business, our bread and butter, the thing that matters the most to us. Here we know that quality matters, that we know that if we could improve our search quality lead over our competitors by some gap, then users will notice, then word of mouth will spread, then market share will change, will improve. And that's what we saw in 2001 when Google pulled ahead of its competitors. And you could argue that that gap hasn't yet been realized again in a lot of various markets. But we think we are actually making so much progress in search quality. And if you don't believe it, go home and search for something really difficult in Chinese and see if we do better. Now with search quality, you can't beat someone else all the time. You'd be lucky to win 2 out of 3. That would be really, really good. But I think we're going to get there. And when you're 2 out of 3, users will move over. Now, of course, brand also matters. And we fully recognize that the Google brand advantage in the US isn't necessarily carried over abroad. And we certainly don't claim that we have such an advantage in China. So we have to work harder. Okay. Secondly, that we also notice that all search engines, the Chinese quality, are lower than English. Okay, our Chinese is not as good as our English. Yahoo's Chinese is not as good as their English. To us, that means there's an opportunity. It just means we haven't worked hard at it. With search quality, you can't come up with an innovation overnight. You just have to labor away day after day, night after night. And that's what we've been doing. And we're rewarded by seeing significant relevance improvements. I believe we were ahead last year. I think we're significantly ahead today. And you'll have to judge for yourself if you can see that in our Chinese search. But of course, relevance, which means how good are the top 3 or 5 results, that's just one metric. It's a little bit academic. End of the day, people have to look at the whole page and see that, hey, you got this, you got that, you got this feature. Looks good, the UI looks good, the font looks pretty, the highlighting looks nice. All of that is what it's going to take to really win in search experience. And we realize we still have things we need to do. You need only compare us with some of the other engines to see that, hey, there are a few areas Google could do better. So we know that. We're working on it. So here is our product roadmap. It has X's on all the things that haven't shipped. But you can see we got lots of them. Okay? And then that's core search. There's a lot of adjacent search opportunities. Just like in the US, many of you probably have got used to news search, image search, other searches. We also think they're important for China. And we're going to need to, once we get, I think web search is now under control, making progress. We need to look at some of these. This is not a promise that all of these are being worked on or are important. But basically, looking at the market, these seem important to a search company. So news search is big because it's one of the top 3 uses. Journalists use it, and they're very influential. Image search is important. Somehow Chinese love to look at pictures. We think this can be 10 or 20% of traffic. Book search is quite important. China is the world's largest publisher of books. So making that available through, for example, Google has a global book search program which even makes offline books searchable, though not readable and downloadable necessarily, depending on copyright restrictions. And we think that's important, especially if we want to also help move some of the gaming internet masses to the knowledge-seeking internet masses. Scholar search is quite important. Actually, Google already has launched that, and Google's Scholar search, Chinese is the #2 language after English. And we're already seeing in Chinese universities, maybe not quite as much as in the American universities, professors are arguing not so much about who has more cited SCI index articles, but arguing who ranks higher on Google Scholar. That's a good sign of success. Blog and BBS search is very important in China because that's a lot of news is actually done. A lot of reporters in China nowadays don't look for phone calls to get news. They go to BBSs and blogs and try to mine news out of that. It's an interesting phenomenon that's quite unique to China. So providing that kind of a search also matches the emerging Web 2.0 content, which is really large. As you know, the most popular blog in China, I think, has about, I believe, 60 million page views in the past few months. That's how large it is. It's just one person. Even my blog has over 1 million page views, which is pretty good. And I hardly put anything in it. And knowledge search is an interesting concept. It kind of started in Korea, where there's a lack of solid web content. So people created questions and others answered them, and then they got linked together, sort of to create for the scarcity of data in the web. And that's taken off in a few places. I think it's pretty big in Korea, taking off in Japan, and possibly that's an Asian phenomenon. It hasn't seemed to have really taken off in the US or Europe.